the honor that I have is to have a team that's like that right now, that does make these decisions, that is smarter than me. And I think that's, as I was hiring, I was very intent to look at who's going to be better at this than me, who's going to be more creative.
Well, what's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here with another great episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass. And on today's episode, I'm an amazing agency owner who has been growing for the past 5 to 7 years, like a lot of us, and kind of hit a little downward spiral, but still has an amazing business. We're going to jump into the story of how she started, how she's grown over the years, and kind of what we need to all be doing if some things start turning around for a little bit and we have to backtrack down the mountain. So let's go ahead and jump into the episode. Hey, Kate, welcome to my show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Kate All. I own the agency Simple Pin Media. We are fully focused on Pinterest marketing, both organic and ads.
And how did you get started? I presume, like most, we didn't have visions of starting an agency. We probably kind of fell into it.
Yeah, exactly. I was helping a friend actually with Facebook marketing on a frugal and deal blog in 2010, 2011, and 2012. And we'd dabbled in Pinterest. 2013, our family was hit with like this, post-recession stuff. I have 3 little kids at home. My husband can't find a job. And this friend is sitting across the table from me, and she just watched like a Pinterest marketing webinar. And she was like, you should manage people's Pinterest pages. And I was like, that's literally the dumbest idea. Nobody's going to say yes to that. And she was like, you're so poor. Like, you have no option. You need some cash. So she's like, we'll rustle up some beta clients, figure out what this looks like. And then in the new year, let's see what we can do. So I bought the domain Simple Pin Media. I thought through what were the content creator struggles? Because that's who I was working with at the time. Like, what are the things that they need from somebody to take stuff off their plate? Right at the same time, too, Facebook changed their algorithm to where the business pages no longer had, that flood of traffic. And so they were looking for, it was like doomsday, right? Like, what is happening? So they all were basically scrambling, saying, where can we go to get traffic? And Pinterest, if we looked at analytics, was like driving a ton. And so I kind of had this flood of people in the beginning that were like, yeah, I'll try this. And I said to them, hey, if this doesn't work, let's just pretend this never happened. We won't talk about it again. And then after 3 or 4 months, they started telling other people. And I started to become this Pinterest educator, historian, all these things to tell them, do this, don't do this. But I will be your representative on Pinterest, because that was easier than you could on Instagram, because you didn't really need faces, right? So then it was still a side business really until the end of 2014 when somebody recommended my agency to their email list. And I say blow up, but at the time it was 5 emails, and I felt like that was amazing. I know, right? And I was like, okay, I have to make a decision. Am I going to learn how to do this? Or am I going to continue to struggle as I go? So I hired a business coach, and now here we are 9 years later, full agency, full education, still learning as I go.
Let's get into because there's a lot of people that are going through this currently, right? We've all had the most amazing economy and amazing opportunities, and that's all still there. But a lot of times, sometimes things slow up a little bit. And tell us a little bit about kind of what you've been going through in the past year, or walk us through kind of some of the past couple of years, because you guys got really good sizing. Did you always envision getting over the 7-figure mark?
I think I'm a little hesitant to set goals just because I'm very much attached to hitting those goals. So I think revenue was always hard for me because it felt like it was so variable. But as we were trending and as we were growing, I thought, I'm also a team builder. I love team. I love scaling with people, which is obviously what you have to do with an agency. So the more we saw clients coming in and the more our team was growing, I thought, oh, well, we might hit this $1 million mark. And we did in, 2019. And then 2020, it was like, what in the world is happening? But our business grew in 2020 and then it grew in 21. And I feel a lot of people probably know this. It's like the online business got really hit later than the physical business did. So it was like 2022. And, when you're a marketing agency, it's easy to cut the budget of marketing, right? And so that's when we started to see that decrease past that $1 million mark. But I think to that, like, I didn't realize how much that whole 7-figure, I don't even know what you want to call it, but this idealism, I guess, I didn't realize how much it had been infused into me just by what I was seeing online. Like, I was buying into this whole idea that when you hit that, that was like the mecca of it all. But it was like, no, that's not
vanity. It's such a vanity metric, right? Like when I ran the first agency, the vanity metric for us was how many employees do you have? Because then you would be at a networking meeting and you'd be like, oh, I have 20. So then automatically you'd be like, oh, you're a $20 million or a $2 million agency. Like we always thought like 100,000 per employee back in the day. Back when we walked uphill both ways in the snow, right?
We're freezing.
I know. I'm grandpa now, right? But no, I'm not a grandpa. I have 2 sons. So I know they'll get some comments. And you're like, really? I do have the gray hair, which this is Luke and this is Chase.
Hey, it happens to us all, right? Yep.
That's right. But I remember that was a vanity metric, and I see so many people marketing to agencies going, you have to make it, like you said, I'm glad you mentioned it. Like, this is the mecca. As soon as I make it over the 7-figure mark, I've arrived. And I'm like, not necessarily. Like, sometimes it actually gets harder because it gets more complex. What did you see when you got over the 7-figure mark?
And like, then all of a sudden this weight, like I said, I love people. I love growing a team, and my people have been so loyal to me. And in the beginning, I chose to hire people who are local to the Portland, Vancouver area, and an all women team. So a lot of my people are part-time too, because they're moms at home who want to work at home, but also want to be available for their kids. And so totally. And their work at night, or I never have to tell anybody when to work. Right. And they're so loyal to the company and they're cheering everything on. And then you hit over this mark and you're like, oh, there's all these people behind me. Like the weight of the responsibility, not only for me as the sole income provider for my family, but now I have all these other people. And I think you begin to all of a sudden interrogate, like, how are clients coming into my ecosystem? How are we sustaining? Can we sustain this? And then that realization that nobody's ever gone through a pandemic followed by a recession. Like, there's no playbook on how to do this, even if someone tells you they know what to do. And so the weight was almost like crushing. And I think because our labor costs had got so high, it was just a lot of different things that it's harder to course correct. Like, I was at a conference last week and it was a lot of content creators who were solopreneurs or had like a couple contractors. And I thought, that sounds really nice. Like, it's not, it's different than when you have all these other people.
Do you feel that, were self-sabotaging yourself because the weight was getting so heavy on your shoulders?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I actually was working with a coach who said to me when we were talking, she said, do you realize in the last 10 minutes, you've said, get it right 8 times? And I was like, no. And she was like, you have to pay attention to the fact that there's no one right way. Your P&L isn't the sum of your identity. Your decisions aren't the sum of your identity. You're running a business and you have to extract yourself from it. But I was so immersed in it that I still have a hard time with it. Like, realizing that I'm guessing, right? And if I don't trust myself to make a good enough educated guess, then I realize like the trust doesn't leak out to my team. Like, I'm not trusting anybody. So yeah, I think there's an element of you look around. I would say a big thing for me too as well is I got a little distracted in what I saw in the online world from course creators because their marketing funnel is different, right? Versus agency. Right, exactly. You're going to grow your list like overnight. I think I had an aha moment. Like, there are some people who are great marketers and there are some people who are great teachers and there are some people who are great service providers. And to be all three is a unicorn that I don't really think exists.
Well, I think we all look at other people's persona that they put out there And we think the grass is greener on that side. And what we don't realize is the grass is greener on the side you actually water. And if you stop focusing on, thinking about, well, why can't my life and that be like that, right? And then also you have to have split personalities or how you associate yourself, right? And now everyone's like, well, really? Like you're supposed to be like kind of different? Because everyone thinks, especially running an agency, I went through this. I went through this many times where my whole identity was being an agency owner. And that was a big mistake because then when I built the business to where it didn't need me for the things that I used to do, it needed me for new things. My identity, I didn't have an identity because I didn't realize the new role. And then when I sold the agency, I went through the same thing I sold my soul. And that's a big thing when we're buying an agency, one of the hardest things for the owner to do is to realize they are not an entrepreneur, they're entrepreneurial. They're creative, right? Like it's more around action or a verb. I'm getting that right on the verb. Everyone's associating themselves to a noun. And when they sell, it's harder. They feel like they're selling themselves versus the other because you always be creative. You always be entrepreneurial. You can create other things. And what you were saying before of going, I stopped growing a little bit or I felt all this weight on my shoulders. Well, if I fail because I made the wrong decision, that reflected on me rather than kind of treating it as it's a freaking test. Like I'm going to test this out. Did it work or not? Like, I don't care. I'm still going to be the cool person I am. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. And I think when I started too, I was really clear to put the company almost in a separate box to say like, we, not I. And I think I tried to really extract too the identity of Kate from Simple Pin Media, but then realizing it was so enmeshed, but I didn't think it was. Like I kind of tricked myself into thinking like totally separate. Then when it kind of came crashing down, like you said, you realize like your identity is so wrapped into it, which it shouldn't be. Like I look at, I don't know if anybody else does this. It's kind of weird, but I will drive, somewhere and I'm looking at all these businesses as I drive. And I think there's a person, barring like the corporate people, but there's a person who owns this nail salon, this town, whatever, doctor's office, chiropractor. They're hustling and they're grinding because they believe in what it is that they're providing. Every day amazing? No. And do they know what they're doing? I mean, they can get an idea, but they're on a different corner or they're on a different path or they serve a different demographic. And I think that realization late last year of why did I believe that I was immune to all these other things that every business owner on earth has to experience? Like, that's a little bit like prideful that I'm the exception to the rule. Like, I'm not going to experience this. Whatever. Like, I got my world rocked.
How many times over the years of starting the agency, how many times have you wanted to quit? Can you count that?
Oh, gosh.
I can't count that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just this last weekend, I was like, I'm done. Like I went out with my husband and I'm like, it's over. I'm done. And he was like, wait a minute. Let's like pump the brakes, like have a beer. Let's talk about it after that.
How did that mindset change other than the beer?
Right. Well, it's actually really cool because we talked a lot about, like, I realized like I was putting so much weight on the responsibility of the people who work for me that I was willing to sacrifice myself. Like I was going to this place of like, maybe we'll sell the agency. I'll sell my car. Like I'll do all these things. And he was like, back up a minute. Like companies have to course correct. And sometimes the bummer part is that people need to be laid off and let go. But you're not doing it because they're not an amazing human or they're not really good, but it's just a matter of fact of dollars and cents. Like it's personal or it's business, it's not personal. And I don't know if you've ever watched that like Moneyball firing scene on YouTube. If you haven't, it's like...
It's my favorite movie. We quoted it in the book.
It's amazing. And it's the thing I have to remind myself of, like, these things just happen and I am an owner for a reason and I am a leader for a reason. And if I choose to shut this all down, then everybody loses, right? And so it was this kind of course correct moment of, well, I mean, I think everybody's had it, right? It's doomsday. It's over. Like, I'm done. I'm burnt out. I'm like throw it all away. Like somebody can have it. And it's like, that's crazy. Let's bring it back to the middle. And then we can kind of come up for air and start to look at it in a more objective way.
Yeah. And, I'm glad you mentioned objective, because you have to almost, and this is hard for anyone. I know it's hard for me. I mean, hell, man, at like the beginning of the year or the end of the year, there was quite a bit of people that I was like, well, why are they leaving us? That they've been with us for 2 or 3 years. And I'm like, you're supposed to stay with us for life. And then I'm like, no, they've gotten what they need. Now they need to fly off. And if they want, they can always come back, right? Like, but you second guess yourself. And you do think, this band, I've lost it. All these people reaching out on TikTok and like hitting promising 40 leads, that's where they're all going, right? Like, that's what you think. But what worked for me is I had to be like, if this was one of my clients, what would I tell them? What would that advice be? And then look yourself in the mirror and try to take that and going, okay, how do I get back to the basics? How do I get back to what got us here, or what could we do new in order to get us to the next level? Because I think we always rely on what got us here, and you should look at that, because a lot of times, I don't know if you're like this, where you try something, it works, like cool, and then you get another idea and go do something else. And you never return to what got you there. Does that happen?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think that's where, like, I'm a little bit in that phase now of looking back and going, okay, what was in 2018, 2019? Like, what are the lessons I can learn from that? What is the team structure? What was my role? Like, what was I taking a look at? Because I think there's a lot to be learned and gained from that, instead of this, you just grow yourself out of a job, right? Like, and then you all of a sudden realize, well, maybe I have to do some things again and get a little messy. And instead of seeing that as bad, why don't I see that as a good thing? Because I have all this experience in the last 3 years that are going to help me be a better version of who I was in 2019. And I'm going to be smarter and quicker and have all that wisdom. And instead of resenting, I guess, the decline in growth, which is super, I mean, I think everybody would do that right away. Like, this sucks, right? But maybe I can see it differently. And maybe I can even be more profitable and more targeted and more understanding of where clients are at right now when it comes to Pinterest marketing, which, doesn't get a lot of love in the grand scheme of Instagram and TikTok. So it's re-examining it with a new lens, which I need to see that as good instead of seeing it as a negative.
Well, when I look back at the first agency, the only really things I remember were all the tough things that we accomplished. Mm-hmm. Like, there was one, really kind of the good parts. I only really remember getting like best place to work, because that was the pinnacle for us. I really felt, because that was essays and surveys and all that kind of went to the team, not the other awards that you can buy and all that kind of that bullshit. But like, I always remember the tough part. And so whenever I when I'm going through tough times, I always remember that. And then I also look back at what got us here, but then I also look at, well, are we doing the same thing that we've done over and over again, where people are just like numb to it? And you're like, well, I need to do something new. Like, maybe I need to try TikTok or whatever new things are out there to see if we can get the attention. But at the end of the day, I really think it goes back to, you have a vision. Like, you didn't have a vision when you were an accidental agency. It probably took a couple of years. Yeah. And then, you come up with a vision, and then you share it with the team, and then they start living that and actually doing it. And that's the most rewarding. I was talking to one of my team members yesterday, and Stacy went to me, she goes, you remember a couple of years ago, you said when people have a challenge and they come to us, you kind of go to your mental Rolodex of what you need to do. She's like, I did that. I was like, I know what that means now, because she's been with me for 8 years.
Right.
And she knows as much as I do. And it's cool to see them get that. It's kind of like, all right, cool. Like, you don't have to do everything. And that's one thing I'll tell you, especially after that beer from the weekend, like, oh, I'm done. Right? Like, if you can get that team to a place where they believe in what you believe, you share the same vision, and then they start making decisions without you that probably are even better than what you've been on, you're like, cool, like this is me.
Totally. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think the honor that I have is to have a team that's like that right now, that does make these decisions, that is smarter than me. And I think that's, as I was hiring, I was very intent to look at who's going to be better at this than me, who's going to be more creative. And I actually listened to Jesse Cole of Savannah Bananas last weekend at a conference, and he talked about like flexing that idea muscle with your team. He's like, if you haven't flexed it, then nobody really knows how to percolate ideas, or, you know, everybody's in this implementation mode and not so much in this like dreaming or experiment mode, that they're kind of like, okay, if we say something, and then it has to be done right away. But what if we just flex the idea muscle? Like just kind of got creative. And that was really inspiring to me, because I thought, yeah, I think our team has been so grinding it out the last like 9 or 10 months, like feeling like we're white knuckling, that we haven't gotten above the water, you know, and said, how can we look at this in a new way? Like, what's a new kind of fun way to serve clients, or like stand out different, or just think differently? Like this opportunity of the squeeze, if you will, like really allows us to dream bigger and think bigger. And not like, so I feel like I've had in the hard places, we have all these epiphanies, right? We don't want them. We don't want it to be tough, but it's the place where you learn the most.
Exactly. I love it. And yeah, I remember I was in a mastermind with him, and he showed up in his yellow suit. I'm like, who is this guy? I'm like, I need to meet this guy. So he's just the character and what he's done for, you know, that little Bible League team. So it's really cool. Well, this has all been amazing, Kate. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the listeners listening in?
You know, I think it's that element of like, what is it like to go down the other side? And I think one of the things in the last half of the year that I found most like interesting was just this realization that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to like seek options of maybe lines of credit, which I didn't have one. I didn't know anything about it. No one ever told me anything. Thankfully, I haven't had to use it, but it's like, I think that part of my story now, so many years later, is forming the second phase of whatever the agency, Kate, the agency owner, looks like. And I think I reflect on your story of you have, you know, growing and building and selling. Like, I don't know what my story will look like in the future, but I hope that like all these things that are hard are going to go deeper into that. So that's not so much anything you should ask me about. You're welcome to, but it's more like, I want to encourage other people that like, this time is hard. Like it is definitely, I know no agency owner that's like, I'm crushing it and loving it. I'm sure they're out there, but it's not the narrative that we hear.
They're out there for a brief moment until something smacks them in the face. It's kind of like what Tyson says, you don't know how to listen. You don't know, how are you going to react until you get punched in the face or something like that? I think you all get a point. You know, it's like life's all good. And I think, you know, it was that way for many years in the past couple of years. Like, it's all good. But the good thing about this is when everybody freaks out, that's your opportunity. Like, we grew in 99. We grew during the dot bomb. We grew through 9/11. We grew through 08. We grew through COVID. We'll grow through this as well. So, you know, it's just, what do you look at in order to find that? But what's the website, Kate? People can go and check your agency out.
Yeah, simplepin, PIN, media.com.
Awesome. We'll go check that out. And if you guys need more help with getting direction and clarity and what to avoid, we created a free masterclass for you where we really literally put everything out for you. It's 4 videos that we go through, really cool exercises to get you going in the right direction, to reset, to really make sure you know what you need to do in order to attract the perfect clients to you, what you need to be charging, all this kind of stuff. We're going to be putting out tons of free masterclasses. Our whole goal is to put out free stuff better than everybody's paid crap, or paid stuff, I should probably say, politically correct. But if you go to agencymastery360.com/attract, you can get access to the masterclass for free. So go there now, and thanks for coming on the show. And until next time, have a sweet day.